I counted 12 sticks and kept my grandson Levi close because we had 2 nights and no door that would open. I carved knee-high drift at dusk into a fence post and packed snow hard against our little lean shelter. When the wind turned and the lash gave way, the opening widened and our warmth started to pour out. I tightened the brush fence, hung tin lids on low twine, and listened for that rattle in the dark. I was not waiting for kindness, only for the next breath to stay in his chest. In January 1880, Utah Territory, near the small settlement of Cottonwood Wash. The cold snap had settled in like a lid. The wash lay white and silent, and the sage stood stiff with frost. We were living on the edge of other people's warmth, and that edge had just been cut away. Grandma, Sarah Klein, was 57. I was Levi, 8 years old, and my hands were always colder than hers. She was my caretaker, my builder, and my provider, all in one small frame wrapped in a worn shawl. We had 1 blanket, 1 kettle, and a thin wood pile that would not last 2 nights if the wind kept its teeth. If I slipped out unseen into the dark drift, or the wind stole our heat, she would lose me before morning. My mother had gone off the previous spring and never come back to the wash. My father had followed her in a different way, taken by a fever that left the cabin quiet and the tools hanging. Sarah did not tell the story like a wound. She spoke it like a fact that needed tending, and the same as a fire. The first signal was simple and plain. A door latch clicked on the other side of a plank. A relative's face did not show in the window, and the snow on their threshold rose fast enough that Sarah marked it with her knife on a fence post. Knee-high, drift, at dusk. She chose a spot where the bank of the wash made a shallow shoulder. A tight, lean shelter could tuck in there without being seen from the main road. She cut willow and dry brush with an axe that felt too big for my arms. Then she set the brush in a rough oval, a fence no higher than her chest, close enough that I could not wander far without pushing through it. 6 tin lids came from the bottom of a flour sack she had saved for years. She punched holes with an awl. She ran twine low, knee-height, and hung the tin so it would rattle if anything pressed through the fence. That sound was not for wolves alone. It was for sleep, and for the time it takes a child to step outside without meaning to. She packed snow along the base of the lean shelter, pressing it with her palms until it turned hard. She said the snow would act like clay when it froze. Wind would climb over instead of crawling under. It was work that left her fingers raw, but it made a wall where we had none. After 8 short lines, she spoke one medium thing that mattered. "We do not chase comfort," she said. "We chase morning." She set the kettle on a small fire and boiled snow until it tasted like smoke. She poured it into a cup, then into me, one careful swallow at a time. In her pocket was a folded scrap of paper from my father's ledger. On it, she penciled an entry with the stub of a carpenter's pencil. Night 1, wood, 1 armload, water, melted. Levi, kept inside fence. The wind rose early. It made the tin lids chatter, soft at first, then sharp as spoons. The brush fence bent and creaked. The lean shelter groaned where the lashings pulled. I watched her hands move, tying and retying knots without wasting a motion. By 3:40, the fire was down to a red eye. She fed it 2 thumb-thick sticks and saved the rest. Her breath hung in the shelter like a thin sheet. She put the blanket over me and sat with her back to the opening, so the worst of the wind hit her first. The cold found the weak places anyway. It crawled along my boots and pressed against my ankles. Sarah slid her mittens off and rubbed my feet through the wool until sensation came back. Not all at once, but enough. She did not say I was brave. No promise came that it would be fine. She said, "Keep your knees tucked. Keep your thoughts small." Before dawn, the tin rattled again, different from the wind. Sarah did not startle. She waited one breath and listened. A rabbit, maybe, pushing at brush, or a stray dog looking for scraps. She lifted the axe and set it across her knees, and the sound stopped. First light came gray and slow. The brush fence was half buried on the windward side. The snow mark on the fence post looked truer than any clock. Sarah pressed her boot against the drift and measured it again. Still knee-high, but crusted now. At midday, we walked to the edge of the settlement, not to beg in a loud way, to ask in a quiet way for work or for a corner of a shed or a handful of coal. Her sister's house stood with smoke rising from a clean chimney. Sarah went up to the door and knocked once, then again. A voice answered from inside, low and firm. "There's nothing here for you, Sarah." She turned away without shouting. No curse left her mouth. She only held my hand tighter and led me back toward the wash. In my pocket, she put a small tag she had found on the ground near the store, a torn flour sack label. G.W. Mercer, fine flour. She folded it and said, "Keep it. It proves what they sell on and what they refuse." The afternoon brought a thin mercy. An old trapper named Haddon passed us on the road with a sled. He did not offer a bed. He offered a small bundle of dry cedar and one strip of salt pork. And he gave Sarah a trade chit, creased and smudged from Mercer's store. 1 pound pork. Owed. Sarah tucked it into her ledger like it was a coin. Back at the shelter, she added brush to the fence and tightened the twine. She replaced one tin lid that had torn free in the wind. She stitched it back to the string with 3 careful passes of a needle, counting them out loud. "Patch record," she said, and wrote in the ledger. "Tin tie, 3 stitches, twine, retied." Night fell early. We ate the pork in thin slivers and saved the grease in the kettle. She mixed snow water with a pinch of salt and made a weak broth. Then she set the kettle aside and placed the axe near the opening again. In the long night, the wind shifted. It came from the wash, not the ridge. The lean shelter took it on the side and shuddered. A lash snapped. The opening sagged wider. Cold poured in like water. Sarah moved without panic. She shoved my shoulders back, deeper into the shelter. She pulled the brush fence inward, narrowing our safe yard to half its size. Then she packed more snow at the base, pressing until her palms burned. She made the shelter smaller and the night less hungry. When the fire dropped low, she took a small paper from her pocket and pinned it to a stick with a split notch. A stove repair note, even though we had no stove yet, because she planned like that. On it, she wrote a time and a reminder. 2:10, lash replaced. Keep flue clear when we have one. She folded it and kept it dry. Morning, too, broke with a pale sun that did not warm anything. My throat felt scratchy. Sarah listened to my breathing with her ear close, as if she could hear danger before it grew. She made me drink warm water and told me to keep my mouth covered when I stepped outside. We had one more night to survive with what little wood remained. She counted sticks the way some people count coins. She laid them in a row, 12 pieces, and said, "That is our window." Then she scratched it into the ledger. Night 2, 12 sticks. Do not waste. She took me down the wash to look for something better than brush and hope. 100 yards from our lean shelter, half hidden by snow and rabbit tracks, was a ring of stones, an old, dry well, hand-dug long ago, its mouth boarded and half collapsed. The boards were split, and the opening breathed cold air from below. Sarah stood over it and closed her eyes, not to pray in a loud way, to measure. A dry well was a hole in the earth. A hole in the earth was a kind of shelter if you treated it gently. She pried the boards up with a fence stake. She looked down into darkness that smelled of damp dirt and old stone. Then she looked at me. "You do not lean over," she said. "You do not step near unless I say." Her duty was not only to build, it was to hold the rules that kept a boy alive. We worked through the afternoon. She widened the mouth just enough to fit a ladder of pegged poles. She lined the edge with brush so it would not crumble further. Then she built a low roof over part of it, a lean-to of poles and canvas scrap, angled to shed wind. Around that opening, she rebuilt the brush fence yard, tighter than before. Tin lids went back up, rattling on the low twine. She packed snow around the base again, sealing drafts, and she carved a new mark on a post she set beside the well. "Drift to my knee, January, 1880. The dry well did not make heat. It stole wind. That was its gift. Down inside, the air was still. A candle flame would not dance as much. Breath did not tear away so fast. When Sarah set our blanket down there on dry boards, and for the first time in 2 days, my shoulders unclenched. She wrote another ledger entry by the dim light of an oil lamp Haddon had lent her weeks ago and never asked back for. "Dry well shelter started," she penciled. "Roof, poles, and sackcloth. Fence, brush, tin, 6. Then she added a line softer than the rest. Levi slept. That night, the wind raged above us, but it could not find our faces as easily. The tin lids still rattled, but the sound felt farther away. Sarah kept the kettle close and warmed snow water without boiling it too hard, saving fuel. She counted the sticks again. 6 she burned. The other 6 she saved. No smile came, but her eyes eased. I woke coughing in the cold. Not a deep cough, but enough to scare me. Sarah sat up and held my hands between hers. She rubbed them until I could feel my fingers. Then she placed a small strip of cloth over my mouth. A scarf she had mended a dozen times. In its corner were tiny stitches she had counted and recorded. She whispered, "Breathe through this." And she wrote, "Scarf patch, 12 stitches. Use for cough." In the morning, she climbed out and checked the fence. 1 tin lid was missing. A rabbit track looped through the brush and a larger print beside it. Dog or coyote? Sarah replaced the tin with a broken spoon bowl she found near the old well stones. It rang dull, but it rang. We walked back to the settlement late that morning, and not to ask for a bed, to ask for work. Sarah went to Mercer's store and offered to split kindling, mend sacks, and sweep. Mercer looked at her boots, at my face, and at the thinness of our shoulders. He offered less than fair, a half sack of coarse meal for a full day's work. Sarah did not argue like a customer. She argued like a builder. On the counter, she laid the trade chit. Beside it went the torn flour sack tag. Then she said, "Write it, mark it, or it's only air." Mercer grumbled. Oh, but he wrote. He tore a strip from a ledger and stamped it with ink. Meal, half sack, earned. Sarah folded that proof and tucked it under her shawl. The town did not welcome us. It tolerated us like a draft under a door. Children watched from behind fences. A cousin's husband pointed at our tracks and laughed once, sharp and quick, as if laughter could keep cold away. "Living in a hole," he said, loud enough for others to hear. Sarah did not turn her head. She said to me, "We live where the wind can't reach your lungs." Then she set her jaw and kept walking. Days passed with the kind of work that does not shine. Sarah hauled water when the wash ice broke in the afternoon sun. She dug out the dry well steps so I would not slip. She scavenged deadfall and stacked it in a careful pyramid inside the brush fence yard so it would stay dry. In the ledger, each stack became a promise. Wood, 2 bundles, kept inside fence. Every 40 or 50 lines of our life, and winter answered back. One evening, the roof over the well mouth sagged under fresh snow. Sarah heard it creak before it fell. She braced it with a pole and a split board, tapping the joints with a hammer she kept wrapped in cloth. She left a note pinned to the inside beam. Roof, brace, added. Tighten at first, thaw. Then she made me touch the brace with my glove so I would remember where not to push. Another day, a thaw came and then froze hard. The snowpack at the fence base turned to ice, and a brush stiffened. Twine grew brittle. One tin lid snapped off and skittered into the wash. Sarah replaced it with a thin strip of barrel hoop and hung it low so it would ring if pressed. She wrote, "Alarm, barrel hoop, works in ice." One later week, a bankman rode out from town. His coat was fine enough to shed snow. He did not come to ask how we were. He came to say that my father's small claim on a patch of land near the wash was behind on fees. If it was not paid, it would be taken. Sarah listened as if he were listing weather. When he finished, she asked for the number. Plain. How much, and by when? $10, he said, by the 1st of March. $10 might as well have been a mountain. But Sarah did not say that. She wrote it in her ledger. Land fee, $10, due March 1st. Then she asked for his name and wrote that too. She did not beg. She documented. The pressure did not stop at paper. A brother-in-law came one evening and stood at the edge of our brush fence. He did not cross it. The tin lids rattled softly when he pushed a twig aside. "You can't stay near our place," he said. "Folks are talking." "Folks can talk," Sarah said, steady. "I'm keeping a child alive." He offered a condition instead of help. He would let us sleep in his shed if Sarah signed away her claim. If she agreed to work for his family, through spring, without pay. Sarah looked at the shed in the distance, warm with horse breath and hay. Then she looked at me. "No," she said. She did not raise her voice, but the word held. That night, she let the fire burn a little longer than planned, not for comfort, for my cough. She warmed pork grease and rubbed it on my chest, then wrapped me tight. She counted my breaths until they steadied. In the ledger, she wrote, "Levi cough, worse at night. Keep fire longer. No smoke." The dry well shelter had a problem of its own. Smoke. When Sarah tried to cook down inside, Even with a small vent, the air grew heavy. So, she changed the system. She cooked above, in the brush fence yard, shielded by a windbreak of sod and snow. Then she lowered hot food down to the well in the kettle, lid tied on with twine. She made a vent pipe from a length of stovepipe she traded for by mending 3 sacks and patching a harness. Through the roof, she set it at an angle so draft would pull upward. A note hung beside it. Vent pipe set. Check draft before sleep. Then she added a time. First test, smoke check. That night, on the first test of the vent, she held a candle near the opening. The flame leaned toward the pipe, not back toward our faces. She nodded once. Then she wrote, "Draft holds. Safe." That was her kind of relief. Late February brought the hunger week everyone feared. The stores tightened. Mercer raised his prices without saying he had raised them. Men who had laughed at brush fences now watched their own woodpiles shrink. A blizzard came in hard, fast sheets that erased tracks in minutes. Snow piled against doors and made the world smaller. One storm night, someone stumbled into our brush fence yard. A hand pressed through the willow. The tin lids clattered like a warning bell. Sarah was awake before the sound finished. She lifted the axe. She did not swing. Her voice held. "Stop there." It was a neighbor, a man with his eyebrows white and his scarf frozen to his beard. He was shaking, not from fear, but from cold. "My boy," he said. "He's gone out to the privy and hasn't come back." The wind stole words from his mouth. Sarah's eyes went to me, then back to him. She made a decision the way she made a brace. Fast, with care. She told me to stay down in the well. She tied the blanket around my shoulders and pressed my head to her chest once. Quick. Then she stepped out into the storm. She did not run blind. She carried a lantern and walked in a line she had marked earlier. A measured snow mark, a cut on a post at the edge of the wash. 2 steps to the stump, 7 to the rock. She had carved it for us. Now it guided her for someone else. She found the boy by the stump, curled behind a barrel, half buried. She dragged him back by his collar and set him inside our brush fence yard. The tin lids rattled again as they passed. She packed snow at the base of the windbreak tighter, sealing the yard like a cup, and then she warmed the boy with the kettle of hot water and the pork grease she had saved. In the ledger, when the storm eased, she wrote, "Blizzard, rescued child, fence alarm worked," and beneath it, "Levi safe, stayed down. Word travels even when roads do not." The next day a woman came with red eyes and a loaf of bread she could not spare. She said, "How did you keep him from wandering?" Sarah showed her the low twine, the tin lids, the tight yard. She showed her the snow packed at the base. No bragging came. She demonstrated. After that, more people came. Not all kind. Some came to stare. Some came to ask what she wanted for her hole. A few came to offer deals that smelled like the bankman's paper. Mercer himself came one afternoon, boots sinking in drift. He looked at the vent pipe, at the brush fence, at the stacked wood kept dry inside. He said, "You've got a system." The words sounded like a trick to him. Sarah answered with a medium line that carried the month's weight. "It's not a trick," she said. "It's what you do when doors close." The town council posted a notice on Mercer's wall. It said, in plain ink, that anyone sheltering in unsafe holes would be moved for public order. Sarah went and read it. Then she asked for the paper to be handed to her so she could copy the words. She copied it into her ledger, letter for letter. Then she added one line in her own hand. Order does not feed a child. She expected trouble, so she prepared for it. First, she strengthened the roof beams over the well mouth. Then she added a second brush layer to the fence, spaced so wind had to lose speed twice. After that, she mended my boots with a patch record. Boot sole, 2 patches. Stitch count, 18. She did not do these things because she liked being watched. She did them because winter does not wait for permission. The pushback came on a Sunday. A pair of men arrived with a sled and an official tone. They said we had to leave the wash edge. To them, the well was dangerous. A child could fall, they warned. Sarah did not deny it. She pointed to the brush fence yard. Then she pointed to the low twine alarms. Next, she pointed to the pegged ladder, tied in place. After that, she held up her ledger, open to the entries. She said, "I have made it safer than the street in a storm." One of the men looked at the snow mark on the post. "Knee-high drift at dusk," it read, still clear. He looked at my face. He looked at Sarah's hands, cracked and steady. Then he asked, quieter, "How long can you last?" Sarah answered with numbers, because numbers are harder to argue with. "Food for 6 days if we keep it thin," she said. "Wood for 4 nights if the wind stays as it is. And a boy who coughs, if you move him again." That measurable truth held the air. They did not move us that day. They left with their sled empty, but the notice stayed on the store wall. A week later, the blizzard returned. Worse. This time it tore shingles off roofs and drove snow through cracks in cabins. Horses broke loose in the dark. A roof collapsed on the far side of town, and people who had warmth on ordinary nights found their stoves choked and their flues iced. Later, a knock came at the brush fence. Tin lids clattered, fast and frantic. Sarah rose with the axe again, then lowered it when she heard the voice. It was the same councilman who had signed the notice. His hat was gone. His hair was full of snow. "Our stove draft failed," he said. "Our baby's lips are turning blue. Please." Sarah did not gloat. She did not mention the notice. She said, "Hold your lantern steady," and stepped into the wind. She walked him back to town. Inside the cabin, she showed him how to clear the flue with a wire and a broom handle. Then she showed him how to set a temporary windbreak of sod against the north wall. Finally, she showed him how to crack a vent so smoke could leave without stealing all the heat. Then she wrote a stove repair note on his table with the same pencil stub. "Cleared flue, night work, check draft before sleep." That note became its own proof. The man kept it, like people keep a receipt when they finally understand the price. The next morning, Mercer's store opened late. Men stood inside, stamping their feet. Women held children under coats. They looked at each other with the same question. How do you keep them from slipping away into the dark? And how do you keep breath warm when wood runs low? Someone said, "Ask Sarah Klein." And for the first time, the name was spoken without laughter. Soon after, the town begged in the only way a proud place can, not with knees in snow, with requests. "Can you show us the fence alarms? Can you show us how you packed snow like a wall?" Can you show us what to write down so we remember?" Sarah stood outside Mercer's store and did not make a speech. She asked for one thing: a fair trade in coal for work, meal for mending, and the land fee to be acknowledged as paid when paid, not promised. Mercer frowned. The bank man watched. The council man looked away. Then Haddon, the trapper, stepped forward and slapped a coin on the counter. "Start it," he said. Others followed, not all generous, but enough. Sarah did not take charity as if it were a chain. She took it as a trade, recorded. She wrote a new entry in her ledger. February 1928, coal, 2 scuttles, community trade. She asked Mercer to stamp a new chit. He did, begrudging. It read, "Coal, received, mending done." Back at the wash, she taught 3 families how to set a brush fence safe yard, not to hide, to keep children from vanishing in drifts. She showed them the low twine, the tins, the barrel hoop alarm. Then she showed them how to pack snow at the base until it froze like a skirt of stone. Afterward, she told them to carve snow marks on posts where the drift first climbed. Last, she told them to write it down, because panic forgets. In the last week of February, my cough eased. Not because winter softened. Sarah did not let our shelter fill with smoke. She kept my mouth covered when we stepped out, and she measured and adjusted like a person repairing a tool. March 1st came with a thin sun and a wind that still cut, but less. Sarah walked to the bank man with her ledger and the stamped trade chits. She did not carry anger. Instead, she carried proof. She laid the coins down one by one, counted. $10, scraped together from mending, splitting, sweeping, and traded coal recorded, like scripture. The bankman wrote a receipt. Sarah asked him to sign it. He did. She folded it and placed it in the ledger. Land fee. Paid. March 1st, she wrote. Then she drew a line under it, as if closing a door. Spring did not arrive all at once. It never does. But the worst of winter broke. The wash began to whisper under the ice. And our dry well shelter, once mocked, became a lesson people carried into their own yards. We did not move into my aunt's warm house. We did not become suddenly welcome. But when the next cold snap came, doors opened a little faster, not from kindness alone, from understanding. Sarah kept the brush fence even after the snow melted. She said safety is not only for storms. After that, she hung the tin lids again, not because wolves were near, but because children wander. In time, she taught me to tie knots that do not slip. She taught me to read the ledger entries and add my own small marks. On the last page of that winter's ledger, she wrote a simple line. Built a yard that kept a boy. Then she added, smaller. Town learned to listen. If this story gave you something steady to hold on to, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe for more calm frontier survival stories.